We're starting the video off strong, looking a little crazy. It is just as like a little, what's going on right now? It's after 10. It's like 10:10 on the dot right now. Oh dear. We took our hair out of the bun after wearing it up all day. We slept on it last night where it was like somewhat damp. And so it's like extra wavy right now. And then, yeah, in the bun all day. It's just, I tried to fix it a little bit, and like nothing that I'm doing is, I mean, we brushed through it, like finger brush through it. And it's just, I mean, look at this. What? It's wild. It has a mind of its own. So, it just is what it is. I don't know what to do. I want to film this video though. I look like a banshee though. I don't know. I'm like, how are we gonna, I don't know. I keep messing with it and I'm just like, I don't want to look completely crazy. Like, we're not so concerned about like looking perfect on the internet or anything, you know, but at the same time, like we do want to look somewhat presentable, you know, because I know like if someone clicks on this and the first thing they see is like my crazy ass hair, I'm like, it just might, I don't know. We need to get into this though, because, hang on, I actually just finished writing this. Ooh, today was one of those days too where we haven't been having as much caffeine. We've been laying off of it for a while. I cannot get over how crazy my hair looks like right now. But I need to make this video. So we're just going to do it, you know, just don't mind what's happening here. It just is what it is. Oh God. Yeah, we had a large coffee today. Oh my God. And we got one the other day, a little one from Starbucks when we were out, but we like got it, I think like 2/3 decaf because it had espresso in it. So it was only like a tiny bit of coffee, but we did not get decaf today. And then we also got our fruity green tea on top of that. So I just was like, oh shit. So we had a lot of caffeine, but I really wanted to get this done today because we haven't been able to yet. And really, let me see here. This is so, I don't know, bitch. We're just gonna roll with it. I have wanted to make this video that I will say probably my most important one yet to date for the past, 7 months or so that we've been doing this. This will be the most important one. And it's one that I've been wanting to make for the last couple years, since like earlier on in my Saturn return when I first started writing about this. Yeah, I was like really on fire back then and like really wanting to put stuff out there and like talk about some of these things. But at the same time, because I was still going through my own return and like some of the experiences and trying my best to live in that and like be present in it and like have my full experience and have all the emotions and the confusion and like deal with it in like my own way. And I was kind of like protecting myself in that way too, right? Like I didn't want to be in a public sphere platform like this when I was experiencing going through certain things that like I just didn't, really fully understand and just struggling like emotionally. So we made sure to like give ourselves the space and time to experience all of that before, coming forward. And since then, we've been wanting to do this and it has come to be that time. So yeah, I'm like, where do we begin? I just finished writing it, although I say finished loosely because it's like we just keep wanting to add more and more. And I don't even know how much we'll get into this because of the time. It's 2,300 words, which I think is more than even like our Saturn one. Maybe not combined with like all of them, but it's a lot of information. And this is just like our notes on it. It's not even like, how we might want to like expound on it and talk more. So, oh dear. I think what's going to happen is we're going to do our best to get through this in like a timely manner, touch on the different subjects. And my hair is really bothering me, but I can't. It's late. I need to go to bed soon. But we're still caffeinated. So I'm like, let's make the most of it. Yeah. This is what's happening. Okay. Yeah. Oh, and what else is going on? Well, we have the Pluto-Venus conjunction in Aquarius that's going on now for a little bit. And that's, having its way with us. I was listening to Melanie Martinez's old Portals album, which was a significant piece of music for us throughout our Saturn return. We really loved that album during that time, and we would listen to it a lot. It was probably like one of my top albums, and I still love it to this day, like every song on it. And then there's a couple songs from it that aren't on the album, I don't think, or they might be on like an extended thing. I don't know. It's like there's Powder and like Emerald. There's like a few more songs. Pluto. I don't know if they're all on the main album, but yes, love that album, love her music. So we were listening to that again earlier today too, when I was contemplating some of this stuff on the car ride home from work. Yeah. Let's just freaking get into this because there's so much information. The devil. Oh my. I specifically wanted to talk about this way back when, but then, from watching the 𝖒𝖓𝖏𝖚 movie, which I loved, by the way, I bought it and added it to my Apple collection a while ago. After seeing that one meme on the internet about it, where that one person dubbed over it, what did he say? He was like, "You have 3 days. You must bounce on it. That would make me goon." I think that was the meme that I saw. And after I saw that meme, I was like, oh my God, I have to watch like the actual movie now. And so we did. Yeah. And then I was like, oh my God, I want to like do a movie review kind of thing on it. But in looking a little bit more into like the symbolism, and it's like tied to Dracula then, which we were reading back in October in the fall of last year. Again, I was like, I would love to review the book or like the movie and like include Dracula in it. Because I loved it so much, both the movie and the book then. But then I was like, this is getting like too much information. Like, yeah. And then, its correlation to this devil video that we wanted to make. So we're kind of going to be like jumping around between many different like themes and symbols and stuff here. I think one day in the future, perhaps next fall, I don't know, we'll see when it comes up. I would still like to do that movie review and maybe that book review, but for now we're gonna go through this. So yeah, because I want to get this done. I'm like, we have so many other things we'd like to move on to, and this is really important, especially in the closing out of this cycle for us personally. My hair is really this is gonna bug me the entire video because it's just like, I don't know what to do, Beach. Let's just go. Yeah. Okay, so the devil. I'm like, where do we even begin? There's literally so much. But we're already 8 minutes in, so I really got to get going. Okay, let's see. So we're just going to start reading off our notes and then like go from there of like the thoughts that come up. Christianity, Catholic Church in early days of Christ, as well as BC, before Christ, the roots of Christ in Judaism, the Hebrew Bible, Tanakh, Old Testament roots in Babylonian worship, and more pagan old god systems. Okay, so this isn't even some of these points, and we have a whole handful of them. We like directly wrote sentences of like our thoughts out very clearly, and then other points are just this like little pieces like information to like go off of in our brain. So for anyone that may come across this, in the future, and, depending on what their association with the devil is, I mean, we know from like this current day and age, this time period, most often the devil is associated with Christianity, with Jesus Christ as like being that enemy or that opposing force, being this like embodiment of like evil forces and all this stuff, right? But when we look a little bit closer, right? Because I think in mainstream Christianity and even smaller sects, SECTS sects, not SEX sects, although that plays a role in this too. In smaller places, smaller Christian circles too, because like like other churches that I've been to in the past, we've been to like some smaller ones, some bigger ones. Even there, a lot of times what I've seen or experienced is there being for the vast majority of people involved in the church, right? Like there is Bible reading and Bible study, but not necessarily a whole lot of exegeses, I think is how you say it. Like digging deeper into more of the origin or like roots of the Bible and the different books, etymology behind the words. And this was one of the original conversations I had with my old pastor in my last church I was at, where I was for many years, which I really liked being there for many reasons. And part of that was because of his own relationship with God and with the Bible, and how he really did like it to go into a lot of those deeper studies. And again, he had a more like open-minded, like charismatic kind of view of these things, and he incorporated that in his teachings, and I really enjoyed that personally. And he would give like homework to do, and he'd take all these notes. I really liked that part of it. Yeah, but most places that I've been, I've seen, and like friends of mine who exist in Christian circles too, it's like a lot of their knowledge is kind of limited to like a very modern interpretation of the Bible. And I think to have a deeper understanding, not only like of God or like of this religion or this belief system that we're following, and beyond that, like our personal relationship with Christ, or like, this thing, that whatever we think God to be, right? It can be kind of challenging, right, in places like that when there is so much knowledge and like information shared. But as far as practicing living that like on a day-to-day basis into more of like a form of embodiment, and in deeper forms of trust and faith and surrender to God, and to love that God is, a great representation of, then sometimes the church can hinder our growth in some of those deeper ways because of just how informative it can be without, again, not only like practical application beyond reading the Bible or prayer or worship, right? Like, but living that more experientially from, a deeper place within ourselves, and not just like living in the head, because I think that's, a common hurdle or like stumbling block I've seen in those places. So yeah, and then the way that different churches or like Christian circles have discussed the devil, right? And I mean, being a part of a non-denominational place too, and one that leaned more charismatic, and I went to a few that were like this, where they got into more of the, what's the word? They were more on the like, and some people, not everyone, right? I almost want to say like offensive side, where like it wasn't just that they were like defending themselves from the devil, but they also would like go on the offense, and they would feel like they needed to like do and like say all these things to like keep the devil away, like, and we hear that, all the time, like, I rebuke. I mean, I say that jokingly even now, like when someone says something that's like kind of negative or like ill-intended, or even like when I hear things come up that I just don't like personally align myself with, or I don't like it, or like I don't want that to be a part of my reality, I will jokingly but like seriously say like, I rebuke it, like fuck off. So we got like a little bit of that, but yeah, what like loosing and binding and stuff like that people would get into. So yeah, it's a little bit of that. And when I had, back in my early 20s, right, when I was like looking for a home church and I was visiting different places and like doing a lot of my own research, other than my regular Bible, I had also gotten a Hebrew Bible. And I started studying a little bit of Hebrew. There are like different apps, that you can use. I still have a bunch of them on my iPad. And there's like different games you can play too to learn them. And I found the Hebrew alphabet very interesting too, like learning that. The first two letters of the Hebrew alphabet, the A and the B, making up Ab, or like Abba, A-B-B-A, means father in Hebrew. And it's significant because other than like calling in that, time and space and tradition, apart from calling God Abba, right? Like there was also like just like a regular, child existing during that time calling your biological father that, right? And then there's a like shortened sweet version of that is Av, like AV, Ab, and then Avi, AVI, like as in more possessive of it being my father, not just like a father, right? Anyone could be that, but it's my father, Avi. And so I kind of took that on in my earlier days as the way that I would address God when I would pray and talk to him and just was like worshiping or studying different things. I would refer to him as Avi. And that felt very personal to me. And that is what I liked. And still to this day, like it holds a very special place in my heart. So, and I mentioned in the other video about never really having like a strong hair on my lip or something. Never having, wait, I need a little sip. Also, we've got our little Karumi girl. She's a little devilish character, right? The little pink skull. She's past, I love this Squishmallow, my prized possession. Yeah, so she's perfect for this video, right? Because she's a little devilish creature. So we're just gonna keep her as part of this. Yeah, I mentioned in the other video about never really having like a strong, healthy, masculine figure growing up in my life. And then even as I got older, there were different people around me who would, play some of these roles, whether they were kind of fatherly in some ways, or they would protect me in some ways, or do different things. But at the same time, it almost always, like, I don't know how much of any of that was ever really like fully healthy. And a lot of times it kind of fell apart. And I mean, even like in my old church, yeah, so there's just, there's a lot of that. And that was something I didn't really understand either for a long time. I questioned like why, again, my life was like that, and why, I think when it comes to like love, especially, why there would be these people in my life who would, say that they loved me, for example, right? And even at certain times, like we've had people be very like expressive and passionate and like go out of their way to like do things for us. But at the same time, like it would just like, I don't know. Like, I don't know that I can really explain all of why certain things have happened, why certain like dynamics have shifted and changed over the years, other than, again, like touching on my last video I made of the like inherent triggering that happens, right? Like as we continue to grow and evolve, and I am someone who is like near constantly doing that. I mean, we have down times in our life where we're kind of like chilling out more and we're not so focused on like growth and evolution, but it is still such a major part of who we are. Again, part of that's like being a plutonic individual. Can't help it. It's just constant like death, rebirth, whether I like it or not. So like we're very familiar with like the transformative process, and that is, a gift and a curse in some ways. And so I think relationally, that's been a bit of a struggle, because a lot of times when we would connect with certain people in our lives, and we've made so many different connections with people, and I cherish them all very dearly. However, one of the themes that I've run into time and time again is like making connections with different people, and then again, like certain like triggers happening, right? And instead of being able to handle things, like handle any sort of like trigger or conflict that comes up in like a healthy, cooperative, peaceful manner, we've run into a lot of more of the like unconscious shadow sides of people, where they aren't always able to handle that too well. And then I think when we've experienced people, and I've shared some examples of this, like with at work, over the past however many months, some situations we ran into with that, Where afterwards, right, like when people get triggered by us, or they blow up on us, or like they do something that's not very kind to us, right, there tends to be like shame that sets in, guilt and shame after the fact. And even if someone is like, they feel bad or they're even apologetic after the fact, that doesn't mean that they've necessarily processed their own shame. And especially like if someone recognizes like a pattern in their behavior, like if they've done this, you know, to multiple people, or they've done this many times, like not even necessarily just to me, but like other people in their life, right? If we are acting as a kind of reflection to them of that thing, then it can be hard for them to look at us and then interact from a healthier place and not continue to trigger that shame in them, right? Unless they face themselves and deal with that directly. And a lot of times people aren't equipped to do so. Or again, they feel shame that kind of blocks them from being able to connect in a deeper way, in a more heart-centered way. And this was a conversation that I had with one of my close guy friends that I think I talked about maybe a while ago in one of these videos. Because we, as close as we are, we've been friends for many years. He's the one from my old church. We have had instances in the past where we would butt heads a lot. And some of that is our similarities. Like we have a lot in common, but also like different ways of like thinking about some things, right? And yeah, he is someone who does well with like external processing, for example. He's an ENFP on the Myers-Briggs, you know, if you know anything about that. I'm an ENFJ. And so, and he's also like ADHD, he's a little neurodivergent. And he's also a victim to different kinds of like abuse in his life too, right? And also just like the patriarchal system in general, right? And like how he's been raised as a man, a masculine figure in this culture, and by the men in his life and around him. And this is like some of what we've talked about, you know, over the years, and how that's like affected him and his own inner child, and all, and in that, like his relationship with not only like partners in the past, but then the kids, and then like other friendships, you know, and relationships, not only with females, but also just people in general. Like it changes everything. So, but one of the things that's special about him, I will say, right, and like why we are as close as we are, and we've maintained friendship over time, and we still like continue to like hang out and genuinely enjoy company, right, is because he has that openness and that willingness to not only like be like transparent and open with me, right? Like there's a certain level of vulnerability to that. And I think like knowing each other over time and seeing each other in so many different kinds of like conversations, and then some of the similar values that we have, right? Like we both really value like friendship, right? And then loyalty and like trust, and you know, we both have like our faith. And so there's like a lot of things that we can like find that meeting ground on, that allows us to connect even when certain like ways of thinking or other beliefs differ. And so, you know, I really cherish that friendship with him, and it's nice to have at least one close male friend who is like continuing to grow, is on his own journey. We've talked about like the hero's journey with him too, and just love him like a brother. So love that. Let's continue on here. Oh God. Let's go on. Oh my gosh, we're already 24 minutes and I've only gotten through the first point. There's so much more. Okay, duality. Duality can also be looked at or akin to like separation consciousness versus wholeness, union with God, union with the divine, hierarchical structures of opposing forces, and light versus dark or shadow, good versus evil, angels versus demons in a lower state of consciousness, or simply lacking a deeper awareness of the divine within self, without having yet experienced what some call an ego death or dark night of the soul. An unconscious ego continually contributes to a variety of illusions that keep us stuck in separation consciousness. Many are befallen to what some call ego traps then as well, where in the midst of the death of ego or the awakening process, there are many illusions that arise as forms of protection that we can confuse ourselves into believing are real, such as when people believe that they themselves are God. That's a very common one. Source, or a reincarnated deity itself. We see this a lot too in the spiritual community. Which places them inside the man-made hierarchical structures, which is anything but what God actually is. God did not create a hierarchy. People created hierarchy. And so, we find God in so many places in the world, but like one of the closest places we see that is like in our love for each other. And one of the common things that we've seen in people who are going through their own awakening process, and they struggle with their ego, for however long. Some, it can vary in like that time frame that we go through that, but some really get stuck in that place. And there's like different lists and stuff that you can look at as far as like labeling, like what are the different illusions, or ego traps, as some call them, places that we just get stuck in our own mind. But I find it interesting, even online, like the sheer number of people who claim, whether directly, like overtly or covertly, we hear it in like little things that they post or talk about, that believe, like genuinely believe, have convinced themselves that they themselves are God, that they are the reincarnation of God himself, that they are Jesus incarnate returned, that they are whatever God or goddess returned. And that is, there's a lot of those. There's a lot of people that think that. And it's one thing to see God or see the divine within ourselves and reflected in different ways, right? Like the archetypes in our psyche are reflected through these different figures and these different things, right? But to claim that we are any one thing, or even multiple of them, right, would be to see ourselves as still like something that is fragmented or something that is separate. Again, unless, and even then still, if we're like believing that a particular deity or particular God is the one above all, right? There's so many different deities out there. And again, I think when we use some of our like logic and more of our rational mind, and balancing that out with our, intuitive self, our emotional being, like if we lean too much on one side or the other in our own energies, then, that is a recipe for danger. But, if we can incorporate all of them, and I think especially when going through some of these experiences and these times of awakening particularly, it's important to take a look deeper, right, within ourselves, and then also into whatever it is that we are considering to be true, about ourselves and other people. And yeah, because there's just, there's a lot that we can learn from ourselves and each other. And there's a lot out there. But it's interesting how, again, like there can be this lack of self-awareness or an over-association with the self, where people get stuck. And it's like, if we take a step back and look, right, and see how many other people think the same thing, it's like a reflection back to us. Like, are you truly actually this thing, or have you convinced yourself you're this thing? And why do you believe you're this thing? We are all a part of the whole. We are all able to experience, the love of God. But no one singular person is God. And so it's interesting, some of what we see out there. Okay, let's continue on here. Ooh, yeah, the hierarchical structures. We mentioned that a few times here. Then when we go, we all make up a part of the whole, but no one singular person is God itself alone. Emphasis on the alone. Even Jesus, considered the last avatar of the age, taught us of oneness with God and encouraging people to follow him, but in seeking after the Father themselves through his teaching and leading. His sacrifice was a great act of love and devotion, not only to God, but as an example to all people, particularly as viewed from the Hebrew lens of offering a pure animal as sacrifice and demonstrating worthiness, which again, he would have learned since a young boy from the rabbis, and through his study of the Old Testament, or the Tanakh, right? And so it makes sense that he would then like take on that role, even though it would have been kind of like, I mean, that is a crazy concept for that time that he lived in. But if we look at like the culture he grew up in and that belief system, we can understand why he adopted that and thought that way then. And then again, all the more crazy and amazing that like he then goes on to explain to us that we do not have to do that thing, that same thing that he did, that one thing was enough. His message came with grace and a turning of the age and old religious practices, and that we humans began to understand and turn away from the ways of worship that originated from much older religious systems, such as paganism, and adopting a different or elevated mindset, higher or deeper level of consciousness, which is much of what repentance entails. And the ways we interacted with not only God, but each other drastically began to shift and change our world in the last 2 millennia. This is also something, the concept of repentance, that we talked a little bit about in my old church. Some others, I mean, again, different denominations have different views on it. And my old pastor, one of the things he would frequently remind us of or talk about was like the renewing of the mind, and how that is, kind of like equivalent to what repentance is, because in order to change any sort of behavior or action in our lives, we have to change the way that we think about it. He would also talk about the As a Man Thinketh book was one we would go over. And then again, in just like some more charismatic circles, there was like Keep Your Love On. I think that was was that Danny Silk? I forget. We went through like so many books in that church, but a lot of those, kind of influenced some of this stuff and really helped too. Which we'll make another video about that one day, but let's continue on. Okay, so then we have a little section here going into the names. So we have, this goes into some of the different like avatars or like deities and some of their equivalents, which again, I'm like, this could be a whole video in itself, but we just want to touch on some different things here to get through this, and we can go into more depth or detail another day, but this is it for now. So if we go based off of like the symbol of the tree of life, right, and how, or like light and shadow, above ground, below ground, heaven and hell, right, we have below ground would be like associated with things dark, shadow, evil, disorder, chaos, right, and then some other symbolism associated with like the snake, serpent, dragon, outcast or cast down, fallen, monster, trickster, underworld, hell, death, judgment, condemnation, right? These are just some like different keywords, themes. And then we have here, so in more recent years, right, like in the last 2 millennia here since Christ's death, we have Satan, and then his association with the 7-crowned headed dragon or beast, as in Revelation, and its association with Christianity. And then a correlation or equivalent to this would be 𝖊𝖑𝖊, or the demiurge and Gnosticism. And then from there we have Lucifer, which is also the light bringer or the morning star, and its association with Venus, the planet, the bright star in the sky, right? And Lucifer was known as the king of Babylon, and that was associated with Judaism. So this would, predate Christianity then, and Satan, which came afterwards. And then Venus, if we go into the archetype a little bit with that, right? We don't want to get too much into it because this will come later. But Venus supposedly birthed, as far as the myth goes, Cupid or Amor or Eros in the different, backgrounds. And that has its correlation to desire, lust, and affection, which I wrote here about, which is something that plagues humanity, especially as it relates to people who have yet to awaken, go through their own awakening experience or journey, and men especially who tend to struggle with their own eros, overcoming their own eros. And again, so much of that is attributed to the system, the patriarchal system and foundation that was set up in the world before, we arrived here, at least in this current time, right? And, yeah. Men struggle with their own eros, often mistaking it for love, lust versus love, keeping the energy stuck in the root chakra. Awakening to love, allowing the inner feminine to rise up into the heart and through the crown, is the initiation of the resurrection of the divine masculine, which not only has the potential, but some would even say, is destined to occur, or it already is, and contributing to our worldwide awakening, with much more to come, as this is just the beginning. Yes. So, and this is something, that I've seen in my personal life with some of the men around me, as well as online. We see, more and more men starting to become aware of some of these things, and who are, leaning more into their spirituality and learning about these different things and practicing. And I think it's really, really beautiful. We still have a lot of people in this world, but I think that every person who is, taking this journey and who's going through their own process and is taking the steps and doing the work, doing the hard things, and is able to face themselves with, that level of truth, of honesty, transparency, accountability. It takes a lot, I understand from my own experience, but then also, again, talking to and listening to other people who have gone through this and who are, and their struggles with it. So I understand how much it takes out of someone to be doing all of this, and it makes me very proud. Love to see it. And then we have, after Lucifer, then we have, going all the way back to ancient Egypt, they have Apep or Apophis. I don't know exactly how to say all these names, right? But and these are just a few examples. Again, we didn't go through the whole list. I think my other note that I made a couple years ago is much more detailed in all of the different deities or figures that represent these counterparts. But we don't want to get too much into all the detail right now. But, a part of what we can see, and this is just the darker aspect, we're going to get into the light after this, how there are, similar stories, similar myths, similar figures throughout history across different religious or belief systems, different faiths, different continents, parts of the world, these stories and these myths and some very real people associated with it too, have continued to pass down over time and continue to evolve. And so has our understanding and our lived experience then. So that's that. And then we're going to go into the above ground, right? The higher, lighter side of things. We got light, good, order. And then we've got Father, the Avi thing, which I touched on, king, ruler, reign, savior, warrior, avatar, overcoming, subduing, sonship, lion, lamb, sheep, heaven, life, redemption, salvation. And Avatar, isn't that interesting? They just came out with the new movie, which I have yet to see yet. I want to go see it in theaters. The first one that came out, back in 2008? I think I was still in high school at the time. And I remember us watching it on TV for one class. But I think we had to split it up into 2 or 3 classes to get through the whole movie because of how long it was. But loved that movie, right? And then just, what was it? Just a few years ago, they came out with the Avatar Way of Water. And I went to see that in theater too. I have this one theater I go to. It's a little bit of a drive. I want to say it's 40 minutes away or something like that. But I love this one, older, again, vintagey style theater that I go to. But inside, it's anything but, right? Like, they redid the theaters. They have, like, those nice, like, leathery, smooth chairs that have the little electronic, you can put the back and then the feet up, and it's, like, very spacious and roomy, like, the aisles and everything. Oh, it's nice, and they have IMAX and everything. So every now and then when there's a movie that comes out that, like, we really want to have the experience of going and seeing, we will make the trip out there to go see it. So we did that for The Way of Water when it came out. And I think the day that I originally went, it was actually storming. And so they had a problem with the one theater room that the movie was supposed to play in. And so they gave me one of those little tickets that is like, come back, again or whatever. So I ended up going into another theater room to watch it. And then because I got the ticket, I was able to come back and see it a second time, which I loved. So yeah, I've been wanting to go see the fire one that just came out. Yeah, perfect in time for the fiery year we're about to have here. Yeah, but I love that movie. And avatar, the word itself in etymology, right? It's from the late 1700s. It's a Sanskrit word for descended deity or incarnation of a supreme being or emanations of the divine source, absolute Godhead, or monad. Particularly in the protection of righteousness, dharma, and the restoration of cosmic order. And now concept as character creation, both online and IRL, right? Why is the first thing coming to mind? What's that one game? Oh my God, there's this online game I used to play when I was in high school, when I got into computer games and stuff. What was it called? IMVU. Oh my gosh, do you remember the IMVU? People, oh my God, people on there and being a teenager, people would do all kinds of dirty things. I mean, people are going through puberty, yeah, but I just remember having so much. I was in it for the fashion. I loved just dressing my little avatar up. Yeah, but we see that all over the place, especially with what Meta taking over and all the online stuff. I mean, there's so many different apps and stuff now. Yeah. And then in real life, right? People considering themselves their own avatar, right? And looking at everyday life, the way that we dress up, how we dress ourselves, the way we do our makeup and hair, and people having fun with it. And I think that's beautiful. I love that. Yeah. And then, okay. And then we go into some of the figures, the Godhead figures. So we've got, again, most recently in modern Christianity, we have Christ and his association with the seven-horned and eyed Lamb of Revelation, right? As a counterpart or opposite to the above, or the below from above, though, below, yeah. And then we've got the Buddha in Buddhism, Krishna, Vishnu from Hinduism, and Osiris and Ra from Egyptian. So then we're going to continue on. Yeah, we have it in our older note, but we didn't go through all the details in this one of the feminine counterparts, right? Because that is also a big part of this. But as we see, and we'll talk about a little bit more as to why. Let me have a drink, bitch. Wait a minute. And we're 43 minutes in. Oh, God. I'm not even halfway through. It's okay, though, because some of the ones that we're going to get into, we already wrote out a lot of what we want to say. So this is just, reasons why it gets so long is because I start going off the top of my head stuff I want to say. But, okay, let's go. So the missing or hidden feminine principle, consort, counterpart for each masculine equivalent, often depicted as mother, sister, and child simultaneously. Misunderstanding and mishandling of the feminine internally and thus externally. What she represents in the individual as well as the collective masculine is not only necessary but truly equal to them, as equal but opposite. A true reflection to man of the divine or God within, which has frightened them, and in their fear they sought to control her, which was a grave mistake. Has cost us more than I think any of us could have truly seen at the time, again giving people the benefit of the doubt in the past. Although, again, they're, as much as we'd like to believe that every person is innocent, we know better. We know better. Not everyone is. Even with, severe traumas and loss and deep grief and hurt and all that, there are truly people in the world, both past, present, and future, who use their free will and even their conscious mind, knowing that they are doing something that is wrong or hurtful or painful, deceptive, wicked even, right? There are people who align themselves with that, who align themselves with evil, with darker forces, with the shadow. But in doing so, right, and part of the reason why this is such a mistake, and people, come to learn one way or another, is because when we elevate the shadow or a darker, force, a deity associated with, something darker, is we are empowering them, right? And so if we empower something like the devil, for say, let's use that as an example, right? Or like a demon for people who worship things like that and submit themselves to a power that they are believing in their own mind that is higher or more powerful than them, and they submit themselves to it, then again, all they're doing, if they understand the origin behind these things and how they came to be in the first place, they are idolizing something that is a fragment, is a piece of the whole, that isn't God itself, that isn't the whole. It is not God, right? It's a piece of something much bigger. And so it does nothing other than, contribute to confusion and pain and suffering. And I think people get led into things like that, again, out of their own pain or their own confusion. And everyone has to learn, in their own way, in their own time. But, and even like certain like left-hand path, and people who practice like dark magic and things like that and occultism, I think of some of the leaders of that, over the last, couple hundred years or so, some of the famous names associated with that. And if we would learn a little bit more about them, right, like beyond the theology, beyond the practices, if we would look into like the people who led this, and who created, these systems and these cults even, right? If we don't truly fully understand where it began and we're just following someone else, idolizing someone else, and someone from very like modern age at that, right? Like, some of these people, especially like particularly, there have been, at the end of their life, before they died, and for the ones who haven't died tragically from messing around with things that they really shouldn't have been, there are those who have repented and who have instructed people not to do the same thing that they did even after leading them down that path. So, just got to be careful. But, people choose to learn in their own ways, and that's okay. And that's a part of free will, and the nature of God and of the divine is to allow that to happen. Like, you're allowed to do anything you want, but that doesn't mean you're going to be free of consequence just because you do it. Oh, that's that. Okay, let's keep going on. Yeah. Because grave mistake has cost us, more than I think any of us could have truly seen at the time, because of this, we are where we are now, and our collective suffering is the byproduct. Yeah. And then we go into magic, the major arcana, like Capricorn symbolism with the devil in the major arcana. And different people have different views on, what that represents. But a few things, right, can be duality, dual nature, enlightenment, illumination even. The beast system, inverted power, control, illusion, deception, obsession, binding, servitude, and exploited labor. I've heard all kinds of things, and there are certain interpretations that I don't personally believe, but I think what I've listed are some things that I can see it being associated with it realistically. Okay, let's get into then. So we have here Dracula, Nosferatu, vampires, and wolves. Fun. Yes, let's get into this. So, yeah, this is where we're going to get into some more of the specific stuff. Myth, folklore, and ancient ritual practices. Reflections of the anima and animus, and projections of our own internal states of fear and separation. I'm just thinking of like old storybooks I had when I was a kid. And what is it, like the Grimm's brothers, their fairy tales? I think are they German? And how dark some of those stories were, but like we didn't necessarily know as a kid, right? But we all love a good story. And the symbolism, and like the ones that have like pictures or like little paintings to go along with them, illustration, I think. I don't know, especially in this day and age, you know, how much they still affect children like they used to, right? Like before we had all the technology that we do. But even online now, right? Like we still have representations of things like that, just in like new forms, new ways. Yeah. Yeah. And again, there's a lot of like cross mixing of like different cultures, different stories told in similar ways. Alchemy, magic, sexuality, and life force vitality. Oh, yeah. Okay. This is, let me look down here. Yeah. We're going to get into some more specifics explaining this then. And that's some of the stuff you're not going to see in the children's books, right? Like it's behind it though. It's just not like outright, but yeah, we can learn some of this from that. So, okay, religious, cultural, and patriarchal indoctrination and suppression of women through their submission, sacrificing themselves to men's falsely perceived authority or moral high ground over them because of the deep-seated fear men held of the natural duality and therefore cunningness of a woman's mind, the power of a mature mother's unconditional love, not only for her children, but for the community and wider world, and the sacred power of creation and magic that resides within the womb, and what any woman rising into her power, let alone a multitude of women, could possibly do to the order, systems, and hierarchical structures already set in place in the world. And those very fears that created and fed into these structures all these years are the very same manifestation that would break them down, as we are living and witnessing at this moment in time. But this is only the beginning. Love that. Yeah, again, so I feel like that's pretty, it's a little choppy, right? Like, not like full sentences, but these are just like some of our notes, but I think that's pretty succinct. I think we got a point across with that. Yeah, and then we have here, vampiric energy, right? And its association with incubus or succubus spirit or possession. And like, now this can take on many forms, right? Like this can be potentially like an actual entity, right? Like having entity attachments if one plays with things like that, because there are people that do, right? And like darker forms of magic. It can be that, or it can be something like we touched on in the other video, like simple like forms of thought or habits that we hold or behaviors that we partake in. You know, these can take on forms of possession and have a kind of vampiric effect where it is like literally sucking the life out of us or someone else. You know, and if you've experienced that and you've lived it, then if you know, you know. Which is part of the reason, right? Like we wanted to talk about Nosferatu and Dracula, especially because unfortunately, as much as I would like to not admit, we related a little too hard to the story. So, but here's where we're going to go into some of the more, at 53 minutes in, now we're going to get into the juicy details of the meat of this here, right? Give me a drink again, hang on. Ooh. I feel like too, right? I have to preface, oh my God. Again, we're speaking from a place of not only research, right, and like what we've been learning, but also a lot from our own experience. And, you know, there are certain things we've experienced in our life that I would not wish on an enemy. And even though I don't personally view any single person in my life as an enemy, I know that there are people in the world that do oppose people in that way. And and, you know, it's dangerous. It's very dangerous. It's a wild world out there. And, you know, I think at the heart of all these experiences and what's going on in the world, again, we talked about like compassion, right? So as much as we might be experiencing the craziness of the world that is. And regardless of our own suffering and pain and how much that has afflicted us over the course of our life, it is very important, very crucial to do our best to not further inflict pain on any other person for any reason, regardless of our own pain. And I think that's, one of the biggest lessons here that we can share with anyone. And again, like, every person has to learn these things at their own pace and their own ways. And we each have, our own free will to decide that. We are not victims of fate. That's not to say that we don't have certain crossroads in our lives where we're faced with different decisions. However, how we handle those decisions and how we, take action in any given situation, really determines, how our life will play out. So that's what I want to say about that. Let's get into this. Okay, this is a doozy. Okay, so etheric or energetic cording, karmic knots and binding. So much of this originates in our thoughts and in our mind, right? And it can also come through our heart and sexual transmission, which again is why it's so important to be mindful of our own sexual energy and like who we're sharing it with and why. That's not to say that every, person needs to practice abstinence or celibacy. That's not necessary for everybody. It can be a very helpful tool at different parts in our life. And I think especially during an awakening process. However, it's not, necessary for everyone to practice that if they don't feel personally that they're called to do that. I have, but that's me personally. And a lot of that has to do with my own personal values and convictions and what I desire and want for my life. So, but I know that's not the same for everyone. Everyone has their own life to live. So, yeah. These connections or these cords can happen through any of the energy centers. Portals can be created anywhere at any time with anyone, often done so unconsciously, which is why people feel stuck and drained. And in order to loose the knot or bind, we have to take a closer look at where and why it was attached in the first place. What am I needing to learn from this? Where am I seeking control within myself through this attachment? What do I need to release, let go of, and surrender? Otherwise, the knot or bind or connection remains. Prayer, exorcism, cord-cutting rituals, and or any other spell work and spiritual practices are often futile in this matter because they are still utilizing measures of control. Where one is exerting their own force of will to change something that is outside of their immediate locus of control, but exists in the realm of the divine, which encompasses all people. We must tread carefully because disturbing the energy of another can affect more than just a single person, as we are all connected to others on multiple levels across various planes of existence. And our choices often have much farther reaching consequences than what we may immediately be able to perceive. Yeah, that's that. We're going to keep going. Not all cords are unhealthy ties, as some attachments are necessary, contribute to our learning and growth and a more positive experience, and even are desired in some cases. We can have healthy, positively shared energetic cords or soul ties with certain individuals, such as close friends, family, and children, like in our heart space, a sexual or romantic partner in the sacral, a teacher, guide, or student in the third eye, etc. On and on. And certain people can be connected to us in multiple places at once, right? It just depends. And the more we hold an awareness of this, right, in our own body, the more we can not only protect our own energy, but also the people we love. Yeah, and that was very important to me during this time. Yeah. Okay. 𝖊𝖏𝖏. Yes, let's get into it. Okay. Yeah, so correlation between this, right? As far as the psychic, the cording goes, energetic cords. 𝖊𝖏𝖏. There was a psychic connection. Oh, I remember. So there's one article by Independent Magazine online. So like I took little bits and pieces from that in this that we're going to talk about here. And then I have a quote at the end specifically from that we'll share. Yeah, so it was, let's see. So it was like a psychic connection between Ellen and Orlok in the movie. He refers to her as like an enchantress. She summons him, waking him from his sleep, calling for his companionship out of her own despair, loneliness, and longing for intimacy, which turns manipulative and parasitic. Oh, yeah, the magician 𝖊𝖏𝖏, that was, oh my gosh, what's his name? I've seen him in my dreams before. What's his name? William. I've seen him in my dream as like the Green Goblin before and like something. He's a meme king. I love him. I forget his name. I love him though. He's in so many good movies too. Okay, yeah. The magician 𝖊𝖏𝖏, akin to Dracula's Van Helsing, tells Ellen that one must know evil to destroy it, and convinces her to submit her body to him and destroys them both. Yeah. I mean, I love the movie. I mean, it's obviously not like a happy ending or anything like that, but it's a good story. And we can learn a lot from it. Yeah. And then the little quote from Independent. The movie's ending sends the message that women cannot surmount their sexual shame and trauma, propagating the idea that they must submit to a destruction of self for greater peace. And that is so much of, what we've been taught. And we are, in the process of unlearning. Not only us, right, but also like the way that we are viewed by men and the way men hold themselves in their own energy and the way that they treat women and treat themselves. Like there's so much, happening and changing in the world as we speak. And this all plays a role in it. So, and then we go into another thing that we were reading about the other day. And this is important too, ties this. Okay, and again, I don't know if I'm saying this right, but it's shaktipat, I don't know. It's shaktipat. Fun little word. In Hinduism, represents a gift by way of grace of psychic transmission or spiritual energy through various sources. A word, touch, object, image, and or it can be as simple as a glance, stare, or looking directly in the eyes, connecting the third eye and transmitting to another, which can activate or initiate a recipient into awakening through connecting to their own inner Shakti, feminine principle, and the divine within themselves. Okay? This energetic transmission can help us understand not only just how deeply connected we are to the divine and to one another, but also help to explain why certain people confuse these karmic energetic cords and transferences throughout the different energy centers as being something more than or other than what they truly are. My neck's hurting from like bending over and whipping my head around. Okay, I'm west. You heard me just say west? That was my impediment coming out. I meant to say rest. West. I gotta west my head. Yeah, okay, let's go on. What they truly are. The more we seek control over ourselves, others, and ultimately our own relationship and experience of the divine, the more we resist our own surrender and letting go of our ego mind's attempts to protect us from the divine, where we are being shown places within ourselves that we still fear and reject love, often in the form of our circumstances and relationships with those around us, and in our grasping to define, make sense of, and or understand that which is only truly knowable from within, if at all. Perfect love casts out all fear. We've heard that before, right? That's one of my favorite quotes of all time. Too. It's very true. Freeing us from our perceived separation from the divine God and reuniting with it in our own heart space. As more people have been awakening and reconnecting to their own energy, many have become stuck in certain illusions around their own psychic and sexual nature, and so misrepresenting, although mostly unconsciously, themselves, others, and the divine itself. At this, we're an hour in, bitch. I'm getting tired. We're almost done, though. I am getting close to the end here. At the root of concepts like soulmates, soul ties, twin flames, divine counterparts, etc., is the primordial presence of the divine, or source of all things, and the polarity principle of feminine and masculine energies, which exists in every person, regardless of their current state of consciousness. This is why we can form what some call soul ties or mates with multiple people across various places in the world, because love is a primordial, powerful, universal, all-encompassing force that connects and extends to all people and living beings, including the animal kingdom and our natural world. Yeah, that's a sentence there, okay? And then we go on a little more detail. It's much easier just like reading this off the screen, and I'm like, I don't have to like rack my brain for different things. I'm like, oh yeah, I can be a little lazy here. we already did all the hard work. I'm winding down quickly though. I'm like, the caffeine's running out. It's 11:15. Okay. Twin flames or divine counterparts are simply strongly felt or intense karmic connections formed through these etheric energetic cords, again, often unconsciously, as we are in the midst of collective awakening, with everyone being at different places in that journey internally. Different levels of awareness and consciousness, and can indeed be misunderstood to be destined, fated, or romantic love, when in reality they are mirrored reflections of our own divine love within, being projected onto another person. Whether or not the other person is consciously aware of the presence of the energetic cords is unimportant, because we are simply being shown the ways in which we have been or still are projecting our energy, attaching ourselves to others out of need or dependency, often stemming from our shadow or karmic lessons attached to places within where we still hold fear, which causes much of our confusion, pain, and suffering, energy draining or leaking, until we are eventually led to surrender to the divine, pulling our energy back and away from outside sources, and learning to exist in an energetic holding pattern where we close the karmic loop outside of ourselves. I need a drink, hang on. My throat, there's too much talking. I was talking a lot today at work too. My voice is cutting out. Where are we? Close the karmic loop outside of ourselves. Retaining our own energy to instead freely give and receive energetically from within. Therefore embodying the source instead of seeking it outside of ourselves. Oh, wait a minute. Yes. And then we go on to here, right? The ongoing battle of the sexes. Oh God, this one's interesting, right? This is very relevant though. Grievances of men versus women. Greater inclusivity of individuals outside of typical gender norms, although still a minority, and the commonality amongst us all, the desire for love. To give it and to receive it, to not be harmed by it. Could it be that at the core of so many of our issues within the world, not only our relationships and communities, but within the greater systems that exist in place that no longer serve us, at least not on the scale or to the degree depth. I gotta stop pressing the fucking arrow. Every time I do it, it makes the screen jump and then it cuts me off. Let me come back. Where was I? Maybe if this wasn't like so long. At least not on the scale or to the degree depth that our growing population needs and expanding or deepening consciousness are asking for. Even requiring, perhaps. I'm getting so tired. On an energetic level, we have grown much too large to fit comfortably within the old ways. And for many, especially those in lesser recognized communities or places in the world, we've only just begun to get a taste of what so many of them and their ancestors have survived through in order to still have even a small place in this world that is more than rightfully theirs to share equally with us. And we are determined to, contribute in fighting for this in a multitude of ways over the course of our life here, however long that may be, right? So, for now it is this. So many of our wars, genocides, murders, and everyday crimes that are committed are atrocious byproducts of a greater system that has been upheld by certain people in positions of perceived power and authority in the world for quite some time now. And this system has been one of control, but it is anything but order. It is a system of disorder, chaos, fueled by the blood, rape, torture, death, and murder of many innocent people, especially women and children, who have been unknowing sacrifices led to the slaughter. Whether or not we know one of these people in our immediate circles or within our ancestry, we have all still been equally victimized, as the tightly wound, deeply embedded, excruciatingly painful karmic or energetic knot that exists In the center of the cosmic womb, matrix that is our universe, our own consciousness, our shared archetypal psyche. And when I wrote this, I had a little typo where it said ensnared instead of wait, where did it do that? Oh, instead of shared, it wrote ensnared, and I thought that was funny. Ensnared psyche instead of shared psyche. But yeah, that's what's been. Has been slowly unraveling over time and more voraciously around the start of the current millennia, as some have been predicted or some have even predicted or prophesied across multiple continents and belief systems. Yeah, okay, so that's, we ended there. Like, we didn't put any more notes because I felt good with, like, that. I had, like, gone back up and, like, added little details from some other things then, but I'm really running out of steam. I think that's good. When I, wrote this, I really just wanted to share some of our, like, thoughts and, like, correlations between different things. And again, like, in closing out this cycle, not only for me personally, but, people involved and, how people are still affected by it. So that's it for now. We'll continue on later, but this is it, and wanted to get this out. And I love you. All right, see you soon.